Okay. So, okay, we were in my edition, we were at Mishnah 18 in chapter 2. Different editions have different numberings, and we were finishing up Rabbi Shimon. What was his name? Ben Menasseh, or something like that. Who gave us a lot to think about in terms of prayer. And I just want to point out as we go into the last phrase that he offers us at the end of his teaching, the proof text, right? So we were talking about his second thing is, on the one hand, be very, very meticulous and take care to say this, the Shema and the prayer, the Amidah, and all of your prayers, and by extension, with attention, make sure that you do it right. Then he talks about the idea of making sure that you don't get in a rut with your prayers. And we talked about different difficulties we have and obstacles that there are to praying with a full heart. And I just want to bring out the proof text that he adduces, that he brings for this point. So if we read just that second phrase, he says, and when you pray, this is my translation I have in my edition. When you pray, make not your prayer a fixed form. Plea for mercy and supplication before the All-Present. Okay, and that's what we've been talking about for a while. And then he says, for it is written, right? Shenemar, as it says. And then the verse that he quotes is from Joel, from Yoel. Ki chanun v'rachumhu. God is gracious and compassionate, erech apayim v'rav chesed, long-suffering and full of love, v'nicham al hara'ah, and is ready always to overlook or rethink evil. So with different translation, that was my extemporaneous translation of the verse. But so what's the point of that verse? What is that verse telling us? Why does he need, what would we lose? I mean, after all, we had some very good discussion, just focusing on his own instruction. What does this verse do for us? What can we imagine his point of saying, I want to share this verse with you to buttress my point, to strengthen my point, to embellish my point. Craig.
It seems that he's saying that part of your prayer should be to ask for mercy and grace, but that's the translation here. How do we know that that's even possible? What makes us think that we can even ask for such a thing and receive it? And he's saying, here's the proof.
Okay, so this proves that we can hopefully find a compassionate response from God, because God is merciful and loving, right? That's so. If you think that what's the point? Here's you have a caring God to speak to. How does that help his point? How does that help his point? Well, in terms of the struggle that we've been discussing already a couple of sessions now, how does this reminder or this point, if we can take it seriously, how would this help us in our praying? Josie, you raised your hand.
Yeah, well, it would tell you, don't be discouraged starting out. There is hope for forgiveness out there, and you shouldn't just give up. You should let God have a chance to forgive you.
Okay, anybody else? So, okay, Bill.
Okay, Bill, are unmuted. Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at Rabbi Shapiro's,
Somebody's got some stuff coming through.
not me, Rabbi Shapiro's notes, and they see, and even his translation seems to be quite different from what is going on here.
Okay,
What-
remind us what's his translation.
His translation is, do not pray from rote. Okay, that's fairly standard, but seek compassion and surrender before God, as it is said, for God is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, abounding in kindness, and resentful of punishment. I don't know where, I looked at the Hebrew last week, but I don't remember. That resentful of punishment seems to be different from what everybody else is saying. What I'm getting right now is that he's saying, he seems to be saying, feel, sorry, one of my dogs is going on. Feel, you can feel safe in praying. You don't have to fall back on mechanical stuff to I don't know, save you from worry or concern about what's God's going to do. You can move beyond the rote and know that God will listen. That God will listen to you. Whatever's going on with you, God will be compassionate. Somehow the rote stuff gets in the way of the compassion. I'm not sure I'm making any sense.
No, I thank you. I think it's what you're saying is important.
Rabbi,
Who's that?
Rabbi,
David.
it's David Kanagas.
Yeah.
I think the additional verse seems to address the problem of one conceivably having the feeling day by day of praying into a vacuum without any answer. And the additional verse seems to give one the comfort that one might be heard.
So
That was my
yeah.
sense of it anyway.
Good. Anybody else want to chime in? Nick.
Yeah, I don't know if this is on track at all, but if we engage in a routine for anything, let alone prayer, ultimately it desensitizes us to everything, and so we have to open ourselves up. For me, this is about opening up a closed heart, because it's so easy to, in the routine of things, to become locked into meaningless behavior rather than something that allows us to be in touch with God's graciousness and merciful spirit.
Okay, so this verse is meant to sort of shake us up a little bit. So yeah, Jen makes an important point in the chat, right? But I can't function without my routines, right? There is an element that that Nick is expressing of, yeah, it's deadening, it's boring. What's my life come to? It's all the same old. On the other hand, routines can be, very foundational to keeping your life together, and can be a comfort, and can be actually even a sense of, a source of joy. It's so I don't know if we can, unpack when do routines become deadening, and when do routines become strengthening or fulfilling or nourishing. It's hard, when you I think about close, relationships between two people, whether it's a friendship or a marriage, or any kind of really deep, close connection that two people have, and things that are like accepted and even are lovable for a long time. A quirk that a person has, or we always have breakfast together, and do the same thing again and again and again. And when the relationship goes bad, when it goes south, as they say, the same things that used to be comforting and enjoyable and reassuring and even lovable, the same things become irritating and disgusting and unacceptable, and frustrating. The very same set of known, actions, elements, activities. It's a very sad thing to see when that happens. That the whole, it's like milk turning sour. There it is. It's the milk. Yesterday it was delicious, and today, all of a sudden it's awful. Hold on. Yeah. So routines have the capability of being experienced in both. Oh, look at that. So that's why you're late, Beryl, because you had to get yourself all fixed up like that. Very interesting. Look at that. So, I would, I don't know what you say. It's, I've heard the phrase, you have a chip on your shoulder. I don't know what you've got a Santa on your head or something. I don't know. So, yeah.
Elf on a head.
An elf on a head. An elf. Yeah. All right, Nick.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I'm not anti-routine. It's how we relate to routine.
Absolutely right. Go ahead. Keep going.
Well, just, for example, I was an actor at one time in my life, and there's can be nothing more routine than being in a play, doing 8 performances a week with the same lines, the same blocking, the same people. What is it that makes it different? And that is that you have to bring to it that illusion of the first time. And so I think that's really important.
Right. So that brings us back. I want to bring us back now to that verse. Because I think that when we were talking a lot of times over the last couple of sessions about the obstacles that we find in the way of our own prayer experience, it comes back again and again to ourselves. And this verse, it would, if we had a certain kind of like consistent flow, I would say like this. It says, you don't make your prayer rote, but rather make it full of feeling and so on and so forth. As it says, love your God with all your heart and with all your might and with all your soul, right? The addressee at the beginning of this statement is you and me, right? The teacher, Rabbi Shimon, is saying, hey, everybody, let's try to pray with feeling. Let's try to shake our, our habit and our, dried up sense of what's what. And here's the verse that tells us that we should really try to be full of feeling. But the verse is a shift. The verse shifts over from talking about us to talking about God. And I would suggest that one of the obstacles that we have, of course, in praying is, David was saying, we talk in a vacuum, or we talk to an empty void. Do we feel that we're talking to God at all? Do we have any kind of sense that we're not just engaging in a practice that's a religiously, mandated practice, or it's a tradition, it's something that we do. This community does this every once in a while, or I do this every once in a while. And, I mow the lawn and I pray. I do these things. So yeah, of course, obviously, each of us is the one that needs to, engage in what we're doing. But what this verse is telling us, or what Rabbi Shimon is saying is, you're not doing it alone. Even if you're alone, even if you're praying, I can't go to shul, or I, I'm sick, or God knows what, I'm all by myself and I'm going to pray, and I pray. So what this verse is saying is, prayer is about talking to someone else, capital S. Someone is being addressed in prayer. And that's not, I mean, once upon a time it was obvious. I don't think it's obvious anymore. But that's part of, I think, the function of this verse is to put before us the phrase that we have mentioned more than once. We have it on our ark in our sanctuary. Da lifnei mi ata omed. Know before whom you are standing. So forget about know before whom you know that you're standing before somebody. Know that you're actually standing before somebody. So when you have a conversation with somebody else, that person may be somebody that you love, somebody that you can't stand, somebody that you tolerate. That person may be really exciting person, somebody that could be really annoying, they could be boring, they could be having a good day, they could be having a bad day. A lot depends on that interaction with that other person about how your own conversation is going to go with them. But it's very rare, I think, except in cocktail parties, it's very rare for a person afterwards to start saying, how was that conversation? Was I really, how was my conversation with that person? Did I really say, the things, was it meaningful? And was I saying it with my whole heart or something? It's not the same kind of, questions that we ask, because it's real that we're engaged with somebody else. And yes, sometimes we have great conversations and sometimes we just have, regular old forgettable conversations. But the conversation is a given. And I think that one of the things that we struggle with is whether this is really a conversation. And a conversation can be with the second person just listening. Right? The second person doesn't necessarily have to, we'd love it if somebody could just, solve all our problems. And when we're struggling with, should I do this or should I do that? They could, say something and clarify the whole thing and get us to feel a certain way. That would be great. But most of the time, that's not the function that's fulfilled by that other person. But it nevertheless very, very often happens that a person feels, I'm glad I had somebody to talk to. Right? Even though the person didn't give them the solution that they were seeking or felt that they needed a solution or something like that. In this week's Torah Sparks, what I try to highlight is a scenario that most people don't really think about in the biblical story. Jacob is distraught. Jacob is absolutely inconsolable, and it says explicitly, and his kids come over to him and try to console him. He thinks that Joseph is dead and he refuses to be consoled. So it's not just he's inconsolable, he's really dug deep into his anguish and the depression and mourning. And then, according to the unusual way of reading the verse, and he's sitting there crying with his father. And that's it. His father is not going to give him wisdom. His father is not going to tell him how to cope with this thing. His father is not going to tell him the answer to his woes. But his father is there crying with him. And it didn't solve all his problems, and it didn't make him, all of a sudden see the light or something like that. But that in itself is something that I would want that to be, the case for me if I were in a situation like that. So to use that kind of patriarchal image, Rabbi Shimon is saying the Father is there with you. You're talking to a God who's full of love, who's full of forgiveness, who's full of compassion. That's who you're talking to. So then it might be a little more difficult actually to pray in a rote way. If that realization, if that image was before you. And that's only one kind of image. It's only one kind of image that you can have. We have many, many possible images of what God could be. When we recite the Aleinu, we say a different thing, right? We say it's upon us, Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adonai. It's upon us. It's our responsibility to praise God, and latet gedula liotzer reshit, and to give all glory and good and greatness to God, who is so amazing. God is the one who created the whole world, who started everything from nothing, right? And then it says, "Va'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim." We now bow before Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the King of Kings, the Holy Blessed One. So that's a different image, right? That's an image that's awesome, that's overwhelming, in its grandeur, and makes us very, very conscious of our own little tiny, minuscule existence, compared to big God, little me. But that's not the image that Rabbi Shimon is choosing, and it's all part of the array, the possible various many sided images that we can have of God. But he's saying, take that image to heart, and if you do take that image to heart, not just okay, check, I got it, I learned that Mishnah. If that is what you conjure for yourself when you stand up, right? When we stand up in shul, why do we stand up? We stand up because the rabbi says, please rise. That's why we stand up. What Rabbi Shimon is saying is that's not why you should be standing up, right? You should be standing up because there's this one facing you that you want to stand and engage, and who wants to be engaged with you. So, you're in a restaurant. In a restaurant, you're having dinner with somebody, and then somebody comes in who you really care for. Wouldn't it be natural to get up and greet that person, right? Or would you sit there and just there's a whole, you can imagine everybody. I'm imagining, I'm bringing it up because of my own sets of experiences. Who do I get up for? Who I don't get up for? Who do I just wave and nod my head? Who do I go over and try to talk to, right? So right? This is God walking into the restaurant. Yeah, Jen.
I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I remember a few years ago when the Yankees were really the Yankees back in the 90s, and they were
back in the 90s. You mean back in the 50s?
Yeah, like up into the 2000s when they had the really great run. But they had, I guess it were early 2000s too. But they had they were playing the Seattle Mariners, and the commentator said they were at Seattle, and they were saying this is such an interesting stadium because the fans don't just rise and cheer for their team like you do when you're excited and something is happening and everybody's on their feet all of a sudden. They play music that cues the fan to stand and to start a chant or something. And then they all sit down nicely afterwards. And then if the music cues them again, they all stand up. But there was no spontaneity like you would have in New York. So I don't know if it's the same kind of thing, but what you're saying reminded me of that.
So maybe that's what we need. We have to get that Seattle Mariners music.
And I mean the Yankees before they traded Tino. That's what I meant by the real Yankees.
Oh, yeah. There you go. All right. Those were the days. Josie, you're on mute.
It reminds me, I went to the wedding of Rabbi Yitz Greenberg's son and a distant cousin of mine. And there were so many rabbis in that invited list. I'm sitting there waiting for the ceremony, And some rabbi of great distinction walked in and 40 men stood up. I was so taken by, I'd never seen that before, out of
Right.
respect.
Right. Yeah,
Or
in the Orthodox world, that's a very common practice. And it also is extended in weddings. If you've seen a traditional wedding, and I don't know how much it's spread to other groups, in a traditional wedding, you have the processional, and you have the cute little children throwing the flower petals, and you have this person and that person walking up the aisle. And then when the groom and then when the bride walk up the aisle, everybody stands up because they are considered royalty at that moment. They are considered to be a king and a queen. So yes, that's a standing up. That's a standing up for honor and respect. You're supposed to stand up for elderly people. So that's a respect thing. But I was saying something more like, I mean, what he's saying is don't get up for God because God is bigger than you are, but get up because you want to draw close to this. You're happy to see this person, or you want to be acknowledging, oh, here you are, right? Sarita.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I want to I just want to get back to the question about why even put this phrase in, and reading it without it, looking at the last line reads very, very different. I think this is a really important bridge between how you approach prayer and how you feel about yourself. And so as you are judging your own, like you might think, okay, I can't pray. I don't know how to do it. I don't do it well enough. Who would listen to me the way I say it? But then you have this image of who God is. If you're trying God, that's all God cares about. And then when you judge yourself, think about how God is reacting to you. And I think that's very important. I mean, so that it's absolutely essential to get God here into this verse.
Excellent. So we're going to leave it at that. We have to conclude today, but that's exactly the bridge that I was hoping would to take us all across to come to that last phrase. Let's spend just a little bit more time unpacking that next time. Yes. Okay. Very good. Shkoach to everybody.
Yasher koach. Stay safe, everybody.
All right.
Bye.